So before I get started in today's real estate brief, I want to just kind of talk about a Bible study that I was reading. I was actually reading yesterday. I've done this for many years. I've always read a chapter of Proverbs every single day. Beautiful thing about Proverbs is you have one for every day of the month. It goes to 31 chapters. So I've always read one, and yesterday, I was actually meant to bring this up yesterday in the live stream and totally forgot, but a couple of verses actually kind of stood out to me, and I'll get into real estate, I promise, but this is relevant. Proverbs is just a really good book of wisdom and guidance and that kind of stuff. And as I was reading this, there's two verses that I kind of wanted to just kind of talk about briefly. One, this is found in Proverbs 13:18. And it says, "Poverty and disgrace come to him who ignores instruction, but whoever heeds reproof is honored." So again, poverty and disgrace come to him who ignores instruction, but whoever heeds reproof is honored. You know, I'm emphasizing this one because I feel like there's a lot of times that in our culture, especially, we kind of push back a little bit against people that try to reprove us, and call out when we make mistakes. And there's this little bit of this lack of willingness to be held accountable for our actions. And I think, to be honest, in business and in real estate especially, that can be very detrimental because we are all human. We all make mistakes. We all struggle and we all have difficulties. And we don't ever have it all figured out. And if we ignore when we make mistakes and we ignore correction, we're actually setting ourselves up for failure. And that's what that was reminding me of yesterday morning as I was reading that. It's like, man, even though I sit here and I talk about the news and I explain kind of what my observations and stuff are, I can get things wrong. And that's the beautiful thing about the way even this format works is you guys watching can interject and correct and reprove me and that kind of stuff. And because my journey here doing this is full of growth as well. Like I'm learning a lot of new things. I'm reading, I'm staying on point about a lot of things, and I'm paying attention to a lot of things. So it's just a reminder for us as we go and do this and we go about our jobs that we are going to make mistakes, and there's certain issues that come up that really we need to be more aware of when we do make those mistakes, and when someone is actually trying to better us and correct us for the right reasons. And so that resonated. And then the other verse that kind of stood out was it's in chapter 13 again because it was yesterday's reading, chapter 13 verses 20, and it says, "Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." So again, that's another thing too, is like, where are we getting our information? Where are we getting our input? What is people around us telling us? And is that advice and that guidance wisdom? Is that somebody that I could say, yeah, I want to be in a relationship with them. I want to be in fellowship with them. They're wiser than I am. They're going to seek truth, and they're going to lead me down the way I need to go. And in real estate, that's very true. We have a lot of noise being thrown at us through social media and everywhere else constantly. So how do we walk with the wise? Where do we find the wise people to walk alongside, right? And that's something we need to be aware of. Like, we want to do what this says: whoever walks with the wise becomes wise. And we do not want to be companion to fools. We want to take what people tell us, match it up with truth, and then go the direction of truth, and then realize that the people that are telling us the truth is where we need to align ourselves and not be caught up in hype and all this noise and all this kind of stuff, because we do not want to follow the fools. So anyway, I thought that was just a cool way to kind of begin today. I meant to actually bring that up yesterday, and I totally forgot. But anyway, there you go. So glad you guys are here. There's your Bible study for the morning. Good morning, Kevin. Glad you are here. Good to see you, my friend, as always. Buddy, I appreciate you show up every single day. I appreciate that. Awesome. And I will say this, just to give a big shout out to Kevin here. He is in Lakeland, Florida. I took a break from live streaming for a few years, and Kevin would show up during the few years ago at almost every single live stream. And then I immediately started live again. And if it wasn't the first, it was definitely the second one. But I think he showed up immediately for the very first live stream. So Kevin, you're just that's awesome, buddy. I'm glad you keep coming back. And let me just say this, this I'm just doing this out of the blue, right? I'm just creating this channel because I want to kind of bring some answers to some news and just help agents kind of navigate this difficult world, right? I I don't I don't take for granted any viewer that I get. I don't sit here and think that I have all the answers, but I appreciate everybody takes time out of their schedule to stop what they're doing and listen to me. Like, I mean, I just, I do appreciate that. That's a vote of confidence, and that means a lot to me. I do appreciate that to both of you guys and anyone else that's watching. Thank you. I do appreciate that. All right, let me take a quick swig of coffee and let's get started on today's news. All right. So, welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam, and today we're cutting through all of the noise. We're going to get to the truth in the news, look at the data and what it's actually saying. I'm going to give you some of my observations in regards to what the news is saying. And because I truly believe that in every single news article and everything that's going on in the world, you can find opportunity in all stories. And that is what we're going to do today. So, if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story of the day. And this featured story is basically titled New Home Prices Fall to 4-Year Low as Builder Deepens Discounts. Okay. So Realtor.com here is reporting that a massive surge in new home sales for late 2025. But then they kind of emphasize that there is a fear in the headlines that often misses the fact that prices are actually stabilizing to meet the buyer demand. So this is the pulse of the market that we need to be paying attention to right now on what's actually happening on the builder side of things. We have spent the past few weeks just talking about the overall economy. I'm zoning in just a little bit, finding articles that kind of pull out specific niches inside of real estate and honing in on those and seeing what's happening there, because sometimes paying attention to what's happening in other niches of our industry gives us the idea and a better, broader picture about what's overall happening in the economy. So that's what we're looking at here. So let me share my screen and we will get into this very first article. Let me widen this up just a little bit, make that a little bit bigger. I think I can make this a little bigger without cutting off anything. There we go. All right, like I said, this is by Realtor.com. New home prices fall to 4-year low as builders deepen discounts. So we're talking about the affordability again, right? If you've been paying attention at all in all of the media, you've got the politics going at it, trying to address the affordability gap that we've had. We have all kinds of domestic products and stuff trying to address the cost to buy and things like that, and trying to address those things. And then you have interest rates being a factor. You have income of individuals being a factor. So you have all these little metrics that are trying to come together to balance out the affordability scenario, right? So it makes sense that another industry that needs to do some things and adapt is the new built homes, because they have, historically in the past couple of years, been super expensive for homeowners to get into, right? So this article is kind of going to be breaking this down for us. So let's just read through this and we're going to pay attention, and then I'll bring some of my observations out of this. And it says, prices for newly built homes fell to a 4-year low in the fall as builders cut prices, okay, according to a report delayed by the government shutdown. The median sales price for new homes that went under contract in October was $392,300, down 8% from a year earlier and the lowest level since 2021, the U.S. Census Bureau reported on Tuesday. New home prices have been trending down since late 2022 after the affordability crisis priced many potential buyers out of the market. Home builders responded by cutting prices and boosting incentives, all right? So this month, 40% of builders reported cutting prices, while 67% reported using sales incentives such as mortgage rate buydowns, according to the leading survey of home builder sentiment. All right, so we'll pause just for a second. So what we are seeing here is the kind of the pressure that builders are feeling in regards to being able to build a home and get people in the home and the affordability gap. And so it makes sense, right? Just like a normal seller would do is if the home is sitting on the market longer, what's the options? They can do some renovations, that kind of stuff. Most often, though, they cut the price. The difference, though, between a typical seller and a builder, and this is where we need to be as agents paying attention, is for the opportunity here is that if builders are beginning to be more strategic and being, a little bit more giving in regards to what they're doing for their brand new built homes, then the chances of the actual new built homes becoming a better option for some of your buyers in the resale market could become a viable option. So we need to be paying attention about what the builders are doing. So when you see that, they're saying that they're cutting prices, but then it says 67% of them are offering incentives. So they're doing things like, if you come and buy the house from us, we will do a buy down of your interest rate. Or we have all these other little incentives that we'll do to help you buy this house and make it a little bit easier for you, like down payment assistance and things like that. So, and this is what I see as one of the biggest advantages when the market begins to shift like this. And we got to keep this in mind. The media and everybody else will constantly talk about interest rates. That is one factor in the entirety of what it takes to buy a house. And when you really start sitting here and you start reading articles like this and you start thinking about the affordability and what can be done, well, the simple fact here is interest rate might be at 6%, but guess what drops because of a higher interest rate is a lot of times your down payments and your closing costs and things like that come down as well. So the interest rate might go up, but your overall cost out of pocket to acquire that home at the closing table shrinks. Like if we go back, to 2020, 2019, and 2021, we look at those interest rates. It might have been 2.5%, 3.5%. What was the closing cost though, right? It was extremely high. So what ends up happening is banks begin to make more money as the interest rates goes up. So what do? Well, they're more lenient than on the closing costs because they're going to make it up over the length of the loan. So then you start freeing up some cash. Same can be said for builders. If the interest rate goes up, they can then begin to offer incentives to still sell homes. Their profit margin might be a little bit tighter, but they can still move property. So this is where that supply and demand issue comes into play, and that's what we're seeing happen here. So that's an elaborate explanation about that statement. All right, this is senior economist Joe Berner with Realtor.com. He says, affordability is the main constraint in the housing market currently, and builders are doing their part to bring more buyers into the fold by delivering low-priced new inventory to the market in a way that the existing home segment simply can't. All right, combined with lower mortgage rates, it is an especially attractive time for buyers to be searching for a newly built home. All right, so this, again, as agents, let's pay attention to this because what you need to be really looking for is seeing what your builders are doing in your area. Get very familiar. Call them up, ask them questions. What kind of incentives are you doing? What's the price compared to what the other homes are being sold on the market for, right? Match up the square feet, the bedrooms, the amenities, the locations up with the resale market and figure out if this is a better option for your buyers. Maybe buying a brand new built home is a better option than it ever has been. Nothing here is too drastic, but what we're noting is that there is a change taking place. That's what we're trying to notice here. All right, new homes remain cheaper than existing homes. The median sales price for new homes that went under contract in October was $392,300, the lowest since 2021. New homes have been cheaper than existing homes since June, reversing long-standing trends. All right, so let's see. Existing homes is the black line. Red is the new homes. So we can see that right now they're outpacing, but look how that gap closes and gets really close. All right, we still have this inflation month over month. See that year over year inflation, of course, we spiked really crazy right here. Interest rates leveled off, right? We calmed down the market by adjusting interest rate and kind of, I'll use the word locking in, but obviously interest rates still fluctuate, but you get the idea is we locked into a range that wasn't too drastic on either side. And that began in late of 2022 or mid 2022. And then it carried off until where we sit now. And you see how that leveled off. So the economists, that what they said would happen has happened. Let's just add that. And then what the feds are trying to do as far as interest rates are and stuff like that are concerned, it's working. Okay, so that's what the data shows. But then what ends up happening is the builders want to build and then cost to build and that kind of stuff is adjusting. And what we see here, and this is that red line over the black, or the red line under the black line. If we look back here at the early of, or the end of 2025 or the beginning of 2025, somewhere in there, you see it now merges right there and it crosses over the threshold and then it goes below. So this is where that opportunity lies. So if you represent new builders, this is a great time to market those homes. If you do not represent a builder, it's a good time to start talking to builders and about what kind of incentives and pricing that they have. Lower prices and rates drive higher sales. Sales of new single-family houses were at a seasonally adjusted annual rate of $737,000 in October. Little change from the prior month, but up 19% from a year earlier. Transactions rose as falling mortgage rates and prices both contributed to making new homes more affordable for prospective home buyers. Mortgage rates averaged 6.25% in October, down from 6.43%. With a 10% down payment, that means the typical monthly mortgage payment on new homes sold in October was about $2,170 about $240 cheaper than new homes purchased a year earlier. So there's your difference, right? Now, this is a broad perspective across the entire nation. This is not local regional stuff. But what ends up happening is if you can look at the nation as a whole, you'll see this trickle down into multiple regions. So being aware of what's happening maybe in bigger cities or across the country can help us to navigate that. This is also, we need to be thinking about this. This gives us an opportunity to read this kind of information, even take an article like this and take it to a builder that is not actually offering any kind of incentives. Maybe even talking to lenders about what kind of incentives that they can give builders if they choose to do loans and things through them, and going to builders and explaining these type of things and what we're seeing in the data, and spur them on to do likewise and help them move more properties. You're bringing value to that builder. So if you're representing builders, this is a great conversation to be having. Great conversation to be having with the builder you represent. All right, regionally, the South plus 42.1% and Midwest plus 21.3 drove the uptick in sales volume year over year, while the Northeast is negative 40 and West negative 24.8, lag behind. And then, says Berner, this is a strong majority of new home sales take place in the South, so the strength in this region can mask some weakness in others. Again, it's local, it's regional. Even on a non-seasonally adjusted basis, October was the strongest month of 2025 for the South in terms of the number of new homes sold. The new residential sales report for October was delayed by the federal government shutdown that month, and also included preliminary data for September. So there's a little bit of probably some issues there as far as the data is concerned, a little bit of gap in the data. But the reason why this article is kind of like the headline of it today is because we are honing in a little bit into a niche to get more specificity in what is going on in our market in regards to a specific type of seller. And that helps us to be able to frame our entire understanding around the overall idea about what the economy might be shifting to, because builders make up a large percentage of home sales in a lot of regions. So paying attention to this is very, very important. So let me just, Tracy, she says, when I'm showing new construction, let me highlight you here real quick, Tracy, I'm going to highlight you up. When I'm showing new construction lately, the rooms are smaller, especially the bedrooms. Buyers are needing more space, it seems, than they used to. So, and this is a very good point, Tracy. Yes, when you are showing new construction, there is a little bit of this. Like, your older homes tended to have larger rooms. Like if I go back into the 80s and 90s, well, no, we're going to early 2000s. In early 2000s, rooms had a much larger feel, even, cathedral ceilings and that kind of stuff. And tray ceilings, I always felt a little bit bigger. The newer homes, I would agree, there are shrinking those bedrooms down just a little bit. And I think it has to do with a lot with the way people are using their homes nowadays, and maybe that's the way that they can get around that. But builders are obviously able to they got a new home, so they can shrink the size down a little bit and get away with that a little bit better than the resale market can. So I would say that's probably a very common trend across the board where a lot of people are seeing the same thing, Tracy. I think that's part of the game that new construction can play. I think it is. It's like you're trading off a little bit of size of bedroom for a newer built house with less problems per se, right? In theory. So I think that's the argument to be had. But I think you're right. All right, so let me give you just a few of my kind of my observations in regards to this. I kind of gave it as we kind of went through this, but I'm going to section this off now so you can kind of give you an idea about what to do. What I would do if I was in your position right now and I was selling property in my area, I would get very acquainted and do an audit on what local builder inventory there is in your market. And I would go into the MLS and I'd pull up their data and see what the trend has been over their properties. I would take, most builders will build 3 to 4 of the same kind of style homes. Some builders in some areas will develop an entire subdivision before they move on to somewhere else. But most builders will have just a few styles of homes that they're building at a given time, and then they tweak it over time. So you should be able to go into your MLS, reference, built homes by a specific builder, and see what they have recently sold their homes for. And you should be able to see if there's a trend there developing. Is the same house being listed for less, or is it still more, or what does that look like? And then to Tracy's point, you can go in and look and see if they are good at measuring their houses. Some are, some are not. You might be able to see what the square feet is in relation to the local market and the resellability of the resold homes. So I would do a little bit of an audit and understanding what is going on with new builds in my area and get very familiar with that. I would also, talk to your buyers. And I keep emphasizing this is I would go back to any buyer that I have on the fence that is waiting for rates to drop. I would go back and talk to them about this very thing. Maybe that person is thinking about rates dropping, and maybe they're a little bit nervous about buying a house because of the maintenance of a house and those type of things as well. And so those that are wanting to wait are probably a little bit more money conscious. And a lot of those buyers might benefit more from a brand new built house because of the warranties and being everything new, toilets and plumbing, all that kind of stuff is new. So the maintenance area would be a whole lot lower on a new built house than a resale, a lot less risk on that side of things. So that's a conversation to be having with your buyers in regards to new built homes. So that's, again, if you talk to builders and you get a list of builders that are offering incentives and have good priced homes, then going to your buyers and helping them navigate that and taking them through new built homes could be a great strategy. And that's where I would find some major opportunity here, right? And maybe you create like a new versus like resale guide of some kind, like comparing the pros and cons of both. Talk to a lender about doing some projections on what that might look like. And then finally, I'm a big fan of like video and doing this kind of stuff. So it might be worth, hosting like a new build info session. Like if you do represent a builder, bring in a builder and have a conversation. You can do it through digital or have it in person, whatever you want to do. But I think there's an opportunity there to where you have a builder to speak, and invite the community in to hear what builders are doing. Especially if you find one that is offering incentives and trying to capture the buyer, they're probably more than willing to come in and talk about their incentives and what they're thinking. And you can invite your buyers to that to help educate them. I think it'd be a great thing. And then maybe even have a lender there as well. That'd be an awesome event. All right. So, hey, let me just say this. If you guys are enjoying this, please consider sharing this video. If you think there's another agent out there that you work with that could benefit from the things that we're talking about here, even with you guys sharing information, like Tracy bringing up that, this is good conversation. And if you think that this is something of value, would you consider taking this video and the channel and sharing that to an agent that might need to hear this as well, a friend, a coworker, and that kind of stuff, and just encourage them to come here and have conversation with us? I think it's a valuable thing. I try to keep it like right at an hour, just to kind of keep us on point so we can all get back to work. So that's the whole point here. So consider doing that if you don't mind. All right, let's get on to article number 2. This one is not really going to be, this one, it's news. It's not massive news. And I'm going to kind of tell you why I'm focusing in on this. And but first, let me just tell you what it is, and then you'll see why I'm bringing this up. This is not the typical kind of news that I would probably share here because it doesn't apply to many of us at all. But there's something in this as a nugget for us to think about. And that's why I'm sharing this. But what this is Inman News is highlighting 4 pivotal moments that came from Redfin CEO that is going to prove why he is one of the most, I would say, polarizing, yet probably transparent figures that's in the real estate industry. And whether if you like, Redfin's model or not, and his leadership styles and all that kind of stuff, there is a lot of authenticity that we can find inside of what this is. Now, that's a lot of words to what the news article is, but what happened is the Redfin CEO, Glenn Kelman, he just stepped down from being the CEO of Redfin. And he has been the Redfin from the get-go, right? He has been a proponent of Redfin. And if you don't know who Redfin is, you can do a little bit of research on that. That's not what this is about. But he has stepped down. And recently, Rocket Mortgage had bought Redfin out. And, we could speculate all day long. Something's going on. I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. CEOs step down and new ones step up. It's just normal in our industry. It's no surprise there. But let me show you this article, and then I'll talk to you about why I'm actually sharing this, because there is something of value for us to just kind of keep in mind. So let me get into this. And this says 4 times Redfin CEO Glenn Kelman showed he's one of a kind. From his start as a pugnacious young exec to recent appearances on reality TV, Kelman has given the real estate community many memorable moments to reflect on as he leaves the industry. For 2 decades, Glenn Kelman has been at the helm of real estate tech company and brokerage Redfin. On Tuesday, he announced that he would be leaving the company to pursue endeavors outside of real estate. His departure comes about 6 months after Rocket bought Redfin in one of industry's most notable recent mergers. That's a big whole another conversation. We're not going down that rabbit hole. During his many years as a public figure, Kelman has both made enemies and won hearts with his enthusiasm for the company he helped build, and simply for his all-around energy. As he says goodbye to an industry he helped shape, Inman looked back on some of Kelman's most memorable moments. It's not hard to see why Kelman won't quickly be forgotten. So I will just simply pause for just a slight second here, and let me just there is a an importance to being somewhat of a protagonist on certain issues, right? You don't necessarily have to agree with somebody that's pushing back on the status quo, but it doesn't negate the importance of having somebody that is in that kind of position. We can all get so caught up in the way we've always done things and miss sight of opportunity right in front of us because we're so rooted in the way we do things. So the first thing I'm pointing out about this specific CEO is that, yes, I would agree with a lot of his approaches and a lot of his intensity, in the industry and kind of how he came against other, brokerages. But because he did a lot of those polarizing things, it got a lot of other brokerages thinking and adapting and changing and not being rooted in their ways that has ultimately bettered the industry. So he has done some good things. He's done some bad things. He's man. We all do these type of things, but his intensity into the market to cause so much confrontation has caused people to be uprooted and reformat the way they do things. Now, again, this goes back to even what I was talking about before we began the show about Proverbs. It's like, we have to be okay with somebody coming in and correcting us. Like, there are some things in our industry that need to be corrected. And this type of behavior and this type of personality can do those type of things. So there you go. That's one of the things I wanted to point out. All right, so in 2007, about 2 years after starting his career at Redfin, Kelman was featured in a 60 Minutes episode as a young CEO ready to shake up the old guard real estate establishment. Okay, that's his initiative. I'm going to do this. All right, as part of the episode, a crew from 60 Minutes filmed a heated debate at Inman Connect, New York, between then Realtor.com executive Alan Dalton and Kelman over commission rates. The atmosphere was tense, and Brad Inman later described the debate as like the sound of your garbage disposal when a couple of cherry pits rattle around the bottom. So it was intense. I'm gonna go back and watch this. Sometimes debates and stuff like this are fun. It'd be kind of cool to go back and see where we've come since that debate happened and compare it to where we are. That might be a fun little video to break down, honestly. Be kind of fun to see how we've progressed. The moment helped Kelman earn a reputation as a rabble-rouser willing to criticize legacy companies in the status quo. On taking a stand and taking his place, over the years, Kelman evolved into a gregarious, respectful debate opponent and noted that his tone has softened even as if his convictions remain as strong as ever. So he's learning, right? He's learning. So the next thing I would point out about him right here is that he's learning. So he came in and he's young and he's vibrant and he's going to be aggressive and he comes in and I'm got it all. I see this a lot of times in our industry where people get a real estate license and they start going into the arena of marketing and they have these aggressive tactics and they beat down the doors and sell at all costs and they have this kind of behavior. And then what do? They're confrontational with every single real estate agent in the community that they're working with. They've never even met or even know. And they look at them as nothing but as a salesperson and not a human. They treat them that way. And then what I've seen is that agent either burns out and quits their industry or works themselves out of the industry because nobody wants to do business with them and real estate agents don't want to work with them, or they do what happened here. They might still be that type of person, but they learn to tame it. They learn to cool it back, right? And they begin to think of people as people. All right. So there's a lesson in there for us as real estate agents is that, yes, we go up against other agents inside of deals all of the time, right? We are constantly working on the other side of the aisle against other real estate agents. And we can sometimes form an opinion about that person that might not be based on any kind of facts at all. And we have got to be careful of that. Maybe we are the ones that need to be corrected. All right. So in 2018, for example, Kelman told then Inman reporter Patrick Kearns that he regretted being quite so pugnacious. During the early days of his career, his attitude began to change when years ago he had lunch with Matt and Joe Deasy, leaders in Windermere's East office, who showed him how much they care about consumers too. And I just felt I could imagine them every time I talked about a traditional real estate agent or a competing brokerage Instead of it being a faceless competitor, I imagine those two people who are brilliant and principled, Kelman said. And that's when I began to feel like I could take my place in the industry. I think for a long time, I had been just a little crockety, a little brash and out of line. That is a lesson for all of us. When we are getting in the heat of the moment, negotiating a deal and representing the clients, we have got to frame our minds. It doesn't matter how erratic the consumer is. It doesn't matter how emotional they are. It doesn't even matter on the other side of the aisle how emotional the other real estate agent is. We don't know everything that's going on inside of the minds of our consumer and the other agent. We don't know what all they're dealing with. They are human. So our position should always be professional, reserved, speak the truth, represent our clients well, but don't cast judgment upon people that we come in contact with. I will encourage you guys that this will ruin your career. It will ruin your perception of this industry, and it will lead yourself to getting burnt out and being against everybody else. When you start looking at everybody as just a competitor and not as people, you're going to be leading yourself down a very dangerous road. So let me just implore you to not go down that road. So again, what are we learning from this guy? Well, he's learning. He's making statements that he is learning of his journey. He comes in as a bull in a china shop. He then begins to tailor that back, right? All right. It says, during this same conversation, Kelman added that he struggled between taking a public stand on general political issues versus sticking to topics more closely related to real estate. But either way, the struggle captured Kelman's early willingness to put his name behind causes he sees as righteous. He still stood up for what he believed in, right? He stood his ground. Agree or disagree, doesn't really matter, not the point, but he had a different approach on the way he did that. He said people who are moving, that is a real estate issue. Housing and affordability is a real estate issue. Providing the same level of service to white people and black people who are trying to buy a home is a real estate issue. And on all of those issues, I just think that there is a place for us to stand up. Okay? So that's his position. That's what he wants. But there's a lot of lesson there. So, and he goes on and on about like how he's kind of learned his lesson and all of his interactions and things like that he has had and molded him and helped him to come to who he was and all these type of things, right? So agree or disagree with the guy. Sure, I'll agree with him on some things. I'll disagree on some other tactics that he's done. I will disagree on a lot of his interviews that he's had. His approach and the way he communicates is not the way I would do it, right? It's not me. But for me to sit here and just look at this guy and polarize him and say, wow, this guy's horrible and put him into that kind of position, that's a bad reflection of me. That's me putting my own judgment upon him. But at the same time, I can look at him and his growth, right? His conversation. The same can be said about any real estate agent we come in contact with or any consumer we come in contact with. We do not know where they are at on their journey on emotional stability. We do not know where they're at in their journey throughout life. As a Christian and as a believer, it's we call sanctification. We do not know where they are in their journey of sanctification. We do not know. So what do? We operate with grace, love, kindness, gentleness, self-control, right? Doesn't mean we let people walk over us, but we do operate with that frame in mind. And let me tell you, that frame in mind. And let me tell you, when you start doing that, you'll enjoy your job. Matter of fact, I actually remember this moment. There's a video of this taxi driver or Uber driver, whatever, and there's someone in the back seat, and he's driving his car, right? He's got the passenger, his client is in the back, and he's driving throughout New York, right? Underneath it says, "Don't let what other people do to you ruin your day because you can't control it." All right, so that's the statement. And what ends up happening, he's just driving down the road, and this car immediately cuts him off. He has to slam on his brake. And guess what? He doesn't yell. He doesn't go crazy. He just goes, huh? And then the person in the back was like all scared, saw his calm demeanor and was just like, what? And he then says, nothing I could have done about that, but we were safe. What a great emotional state that driver was in. He protected his client, right? The guy in the passenger seat that paid for the service to use him. Somebody else did something erratic. Did he get rattled? Not at all. He controlled the vehicle, protected his client, and then shook it off. What great, great advice, right? What great advice. Something to really lean into here. All right. So that is kind of why I wanted to focus on that, right? So I don't really have like any big takeaways or action items out of this. I think you kind of got the point as I was talking about this. So hopefully you found some value there. I just think it was a good conversation as I was reading this article, thinking through this, and I've been doing this for so long. I have seen, and it grieves me. The part that I hate about this industry the most, and I've seen this so many times, is I will go in and I will have a meeting with somebody wanting to get into real estate. I have the conversation with them, and let me just tell you, I'm more of a realist. I talk about the good, but I very much emphasize the difficulties. But I'll get somebody in front of me that is super excited and joyful and just excited to get in started real estate, and the demeanor's good, the personality's great, their outlook is happy. Then they get into the real estate industry, and then people start doing things to them. They're faced with a choice at that moment. Is the more you do deals, the more you realize just how difficult people are. Okay. And what I end up seeing is agents that start off with that kind of attitude, as they come across these type of interactions, they end up have a choice to make. They can become resentment, they can resent and have anger and animosity towards other people, and it breaks them. It ruins them. It changes who they really were when they first got into it. And then they either burn out or they become the very agents on the other side of the aisle that the rest of us have a difficult time working with. And so that's another part of the understanding about when you're dealing with a difficult agent. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what led them to be the way they are. So helping navigate that and building a relationship with them might go a long way. They might just want that, right? So being human. But then I've seen the other people that got into real estate and they don't let those type of things bother them, and they're resilient and they go forward and they make a lot of money. They stay successful. They don't get burnt out, and they don't let anything else around them affect them. Be that agent. Be that agent. Dust off any offenses, any difficulties that you might have in your life, and look forward. Don't dwell on what other people are doing and the things outside of your control. Don't dwell on it. It's just a waste of time, waste of energy, and don't give it away for free. Don't give it away for free. Okay, there you go. This has been a preaching day, I think. All right, let's get on to article number 3. Let's see. This is, and I'll kind of burn through this one a little bit fast. And this is just something to frame our minds. This is something I just read this article, and it says silent buyers, the data gap hiding inside every virtual tour. So what this article is going to be talking about, there is a silent group of buyers hiding inside of every virtual tour you post. Okay. And what are we talking about? What would be like a silent group of buyers, right? Well, here's the thing. New data that's kind of coming out is suggesting that we are missing a lot of the viewers and what's the term? Missing the boat, right? Missing the boat on how to track and engage people who are viewing homes, right? And online without ever clicking into any kind of link and contacting an agent and that kind of stuff, right? We're missing this because there's data that we don't have. All right. So what this article is going to be highlighting is that we're missing a lot of this data because we might be using technology that's not capturing the way this is. So I don't know of this software that's out just yet, or who tracks these type of things, but let's just throw it out there and we'll get people to talk and think through this, and then we'll go from there. But the silent buyer data gap hiding inside every virtual tour. As visualization tech becomes ubiquitous, the agents who thrive will be those who understand what buyers think, not just where they click. All right. This is by Molly McKinley on Inman. Something significant is happening in how buyers discover properties. Google is experimenting. I covered this in a few weeks ago about Google experimenting with home-based searching built right inside of Google. So that's kind of happening. Meta just made photorealistic room scanning available to anyone with a $500 headset. In other words, like 3D rendering and virtual reality. Visualization technology that once required professional equipment is becoming democratized and readily available. This is good news for marketing. It also creates a problem no one is talking about. The more buyers can see, the less agents know about what they're thinking. So we're losing that, and that's the silent buyer argument, right? If people are going online and they're using this technology and they're looking at virtual tours, we don't know what they're actually looking at. We have no information coming from that. Yeah, sure, they clicked and watched the video, but that's all we know. We don't know what they're going to do with that video. We don't know what they're thinking. We don't have any of that information. So this is where AI and technology is kind of beginning to address this point. The silent buyer problem. Consider what happens when a prospect views a property listing today. They scroll through photos, maybe they walk through a 3D tour, perhaps they spend 12 minutes exploring every room, mentally placing their furniture. Then they leave, and the agent has almost nothing. Traditional analytics might show a tour view or time on a page. More sophisticated platforms offer heat maps, indicating where eyes linger. Crazy stuff, right? None of this reveals what the buyer actually was evaluating. So that heat map is like it watches your eyes and sees where they're looking. It's like if you have a kitchen photo, like did they stare at the island or the counters, or what did that look like? That's been around for a little while. It's integrated to some degree, but it's really difficult to implement. But there's this new technology. Someone who spends 3 minutes examining kitchen layouts and asks about HOA fees is fundamentally different from someone who clicks through the same listing in 90 seconds. Both register as engagement. Only one is ready for a conversation. This is the silent buyer problem. What buyers actually ask. Okay, so now let's frame our mind around what are we going to look for and listen for from our buyers and what they're asking. The questions buyers pose during virtual tours reveals where they are in their decision process, yet most tour platforms never capture this intelligence. People rarely ask about square footage because that information appears in the listing, right? We don't get that question as much as we used to. Now that square footage is there, they already have that answer. What do they ask? They ask about HOA fees. They ask whether cabinets and floors can be changed. They ask about distance to coffee shops and public transit. They ask about school district and boundaries. So when you start talking about like information that you need to have as a real estate agent, it's not what's already available on the real estate portals that are all out there, right? They have that information. What we need to give is the information they can't find anywhere, and then our observations of that to help them guide and make a decision. These are decision stage questions. This is buyer intent, and no tour completion metric captures it. So none of these buyer tours and the online viewing, stuff like that, captures any of this, right? We don't have that information. We don't know what they're thinking. They might click and look through all this kind of stuff, but we have no idea what's going on. We don't know what they're thinking in their mind, right? Spatial intelligence, the emerging category, layering behavioral analytics and conversational AI onto virtual tour infrastructure changes this equation. That's a mouthful right there, but let's just throw it out there. Companies like Charlotte-based Path Intelligence are demonstrating what becomes possible when tours become interactive. Their AI agent handles property questions around the clock in over 22 languages while capturing which features prospects explore, which questions they ask, and how long they engage with different spaces. Understanding that a prospect asked 3 questions about outdoor entertaining, spent significant time in the backyard, and wanted to know about landscaping maintenance shapes an entirely different follow-up conversation than one with someone who focused on bedroom dimensions. Proof of work for skeptical sellers. So that's the thing right there. I don't need to keep laboring this, but what we need to understand is there is new software and new data metrics that are using their software to capture intelligence of what the buyer is thinking. So what we need to be doing is looking for technology that is implementing this. And I've seen this in multiple of these type of virtual tours and AI type models. So here's the scenario, right? Instead of just going and clicking a link and watching a video, what ends up happening is in the back end, there's heat maps going on, but the AI is watching how people interact, like how long they linger on a certain photo, where the mouse goes on top of that photo, and how they interact with that photo. At the same time, there's probably a chat bot that's popping up and asking them questions. So they might be lingering on the kitchen picture, and the chat bot might pop up and say, "What do you think about this kitchen?" Right? "What do you think about the counters? What do you think about the cabinets?" Right? And then it might spur the interactiveness of the buyer to engage with that platform without ever asking for any information from that person at all. That person doesn't realize that they're showing and telling the AI model their behavioral intent, right? So that's what's beginning to happen. So this is where AI and technology are beginning to come together, and then it's going to give you new types of metrics to begin to track. So I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to this, been watching this for my own agents, and seeing where this is going so we can implement this when it's necessary and when we see this as a good opportunity. So where's the opportunity here, right? I would get and begin to research, just like I'm going to be doing, what tours are you using? What kind of analytics do they provide? And what kind of active listing marketing strategy can you develop out with that kind of technology when you go to do your listing presentations? All right. I wouldn't go to the part where I'm focused so much on like digital advertising too much just yet and throwing out a lot of money on marketing ads. But what I would do is find a good virtual tour hosting site that maybe has some of these things embedded in it, and then start posting those things up on social media. And then you can boost those posts if you want. But again, I don't like paying a lot of money for advertising. I like the free advertising we get, and it's a ton of free advertising. So that's where I would kind of focus on learning kind of about this type of stuff, right? So anyway, I just thought that was a good little article to kind of highlight something that might be coming down the line. All right. I've only got, well, let's see. I've got, one more article here to go. All right. Tracy, yeah. So Tracy says that took me a long time to realize that. Okay, that was during, I guess we were talking about people and dealing with difficult people and kind of getting to that point. That's when that happened. So yeah, Tracy, same. I'm in full agreement with you, Tracy. It's a very difficult thing dealing with people, right? People are people, and they're hard to navigate sometimes, and so that's just part of it. And it does take us a long time to learn that and to understand that. Yeah, Tracy did confirm. Yeah, okay. I thought that's when that was asked. So very good. I would agree. Okay, this next one here, this is a good one. This is how I'm going to end this show, because a lot of times as real estate agents, we think that the buying season is spring. And some agents will agree and say that fall is the second buying season, or like the December we pick up kind of oddly, these little ebbs and flows. And historically and traditionally, I would say that's probably very true. But the question we're asking is probably wrong. Okay, that we're making a statement to say we're the busiest then. But what we need to be thinking about is thinking about our consumer. Okay, what is best for them? If we're sitting there talking to our buyers about, spring, you're gonna have more options to buy, and we're just gonna wait until spring, and that's the best time to buy, and we're having this kind of conversation because we can fall into that as just being the normal way of doing business. Oh, spring is the best time ever. We actually negate something that this study has found. And this study here, this study that's featured in NAR, National Association of Realtors magazine, that claims that buyers can save an average of $23,000 by purchasing in January. Okay. So this is very, I will say, kind of like the ultimate like hype tool in some ways. The question is it $23,000, to get to that point? And can you use that to then get buyers moving, before the spring rush hits? And is it $23,000? I don't know. But I think they make a very good case to make you think that says maybe January is the better time to buy for somebody who's really ready to buy instead of waiting. So let me show you this article, and we'll break this down real quick, and then we'll wrap up. All right, so save $23,000 by buying in January. This study says you can. If there's a strategy that could potentially cut someone's cost by 25%, they'd be foolish not to at least consider it, a Lending Tree financial expert says. Now let's read this through the lens of, the reality. We got to make sure we don't buy into any hype, but let's just focus on the idea behind what is being said. Saving someone 25% on a purchase of a home, that's a large amount of money. Doable in some areas, maybe, but what I want to hone in on is just the concept about what they're talking about here, not so much about the numbers, right? All right, it goes on to say, if there's a time when real estate ever goes on sale, January may be it. A new study from Lending Tree suggests home buyers could save an average of $23,000 by purchasing in January rather than waiting until May on a 1,500 square foot home. This is a quote, that's a significant difference, says Matt Schultz, Lending Tree's chief consumer finance analyst. That can save tens of thousands off the cost of the home, making something affordable that might not have been otherwise. Now, let's just pause for 1 second. We think critically here. We need to think through the lens of who is saying what and where and who did this study, right? So we now know Lending Tree, right? Okay, so they need loans. So there's a little bit of a bias inside of statements that they might make. I still think, though, there's an argument to be had. Again, this is why I'm not leaning in on the data too much. Not saying 23,000 or 25% or anything like that. All right, while winter typically brings fewer listings, buyers often face less competition. That is very true. That matters, he says, because you might also find that sellers are more eager to bargain during those off-peak times. That would also probably be true in a lot of cases. Another bonus this winter in particular, so now we're honing in on this one specifically, mortgage rates have been falling. Again, very true. Last Friday we hit 5.99. Now it's back up above 6, but still the lowest it's been in years. Another opportunity there. The 30-year fixed rate averaged 6.16 last week, translating to about $250 in monthly savings on a $450,000 mortgage compared with early 2025 when rates hovered at 7. Okay, again, those numbers are probably true, right? So there's an opportunity here, less competition for the buyer, or less competition. There's not as many homes out there, right? So the sellers that have been sitting on their home all winter long need a buyer. So the negotiation power is more on the buyer side. But if you wait until spring, guess what? All these homes flood onto the market. Now you've got competition, right? And the buyer pool now is, where is it at? Probably the same number as it was during the winter, right? So this is a great opportunity to get in front of your buyers. Where buyers may find the biggest difference in prices. The Linen Tree analysis crunching 2024 housing data found that January and February tended to offer the lowest overall median price per square foot, whereas the spring and summer months, April, May, June, and July, were the most expensive. That fits with the traditional home sales season, where sales tend to be more active in the warmer months. Lending Tree's analysis found the biggest gaps between the least and most expensive months occurred in the following states. There's your 3 states there: Hawaii, Vermont, and Illinois. Buyers find more negotiating power. Real estate agents say sellers appear more willing to negotiate this winter than in recent years. Quote, we are seeing buyers able to get better deals. Maybe some buyer incentives. We just talked about that because it's considered off-season, says Kristen Balin, a real estate pro with Coldwell Banker Pacesetter Steel in Corpus Christi, Texas. In her market, she says sellers of existing home sales are competing against new construction incentives. There it is again, 2 articles, 1 day, saying kind of the same thing. Like complimentary upgrades and mortgage rate buydowns. That is prompting a need for resale sellers to be more flexible to win buyers' attention. So see, builders building, doing incentives, requires sellers to be more negotiable. And now we're in the winter season, not as many buyers, not as many sellers, those type of things. So there's an opportunity here for your people, right? For your buyers. All right. So we've labored that. I'm just going to jump down and summarize this up for you guys real quick. So opportunity. It's opportunity. Don't fall into the trap. This is going back to even talking about where we think that we've always done something and we think that it's the right way. Oh, spring is the season. Let's start doing it in spring. And that's what we start doing, all our marketing together. We spend, January, February doing all this prep, busy work in our business, trying to get it all just perfect and lay it out and planned out and all these goals and all this kind of stuff that we're working on, that we then missed an opportunity sitting right in front of us. And here it is, right? It makes perfect sense. This is logical, right? These sellers that have had their home on the market through the winter need to sell their house. And then you got the new construction that's given incentives. You got a great market here, especially with the interest rates. So I would encourage you, as far as an action item, go back into your database. You can either send a video, make a call, send a text, or send an email. But what I would do is I would label it like January savings, winter savings, something like that, to to call your cold buyers or people on the fence to action. Get them talking, right? This goes back to even last week or yesterday when I was talking about affordability mapping, breaking down the numbers about what the cost of actual ownership looks like. And if you wait a month over month, how much equity you're actually losing. This is all the math that they need to be able to understand. Then I would be very good at understanding the market and being able to negotiate for your buyer, research negotiation tactics in regards of winter months. I mean, good Lord, ChatGPT and everybody else could probably draft up some amazing scripts for that very topic, right? So I would get in there and mess around with that. And I would educate when you do have conversations with your buyers that are on that list and people that you're talking to, you need to educate them and start talking about spring competition and what that actually looks like. And like what actually happens if they do wait until then. So have that conversation. Get on the phone right now and start calling them. Spend this morning, take an hour and call anybody that's on the fence and start saying like, hey, I know you were thinking about waiting. Look, now's a good time. Interest rates are lower than they have been in many years. We don't have as much competition right now. So we need to get in there and find you a deal. We need to go out and start looking at properties and find you a home because you're losing this amount of equity. Walk them through the affordability map. Talk to them about that, right? And then I would go through expired listings. I would go into your MLS right now, pull up expired listings and find out where they are and have the entire conversation with them about getting their home back on the market and getting it sold. And tell them your strategy. Tell them what you're thinking about doing. And telling them that if they did not sell right now, now is a good time because if you wait until spring, you're going to be competing with all these other homes. So if you're ready to sell, let's get on the market now and let's sell it. And maybe you just have the buyer also for the seller. And guess what? You got both sides. This would be an amazing win, right? So there you go. It's a lot, guys. So hopefully you guys have found some value here. Tracy, she said, yes, you have more price reductions at first of year 2. Yeah. Yep, you do. Yep, that's very true. So price reductions end up happening because the seller sat on the house for too long. They need to move that property. So that ends up happening. So now's a good time, guys. Like as a real estate agent, I think it's a great opportunity. I wouldn't wait for spring. I would get emails out. That's a great touch to make. Gives you a reason to start calling them. So it's amazing. So appreciate it. You're welcome, Tracy. Thank you for being here. Again, thank you for everybody that's been here. I do appreciate you guys greatly for taking the time. Before I leave, though, let me give you an update on the show here, too, as far as my schedule going into the next few days. Tomorrow, we will not be live here at 8:30. Typically on Monday through Thursday here. We'll not be able to do a live stream on Thursday. Got to be traveling. But I'm going to actually log on. If I can get my schedule to work, there's a couple of news articles that I want to bring to light that I've read. It's going back a couple months ago that I'm going to talk about on Friday. So I'll log on. It might just be a 30-minute show that day. I might be able to stretch it to an hour. We'll see if my schedule works out. But that will be Friday. Then I will not be live on Monday, but I'll be back on my normal schedule next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So that's the schedule for this show. So to wrap this up, I want you guys to have an amazing day. I do appreciate you guys being here. So that is your real estate brief for today. If you found this helpful, please consider hitting the like button and to tell YouTube you would like more of this type of content, and consider subscribing to join a community of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first. If you find this valuable and you think you know another real estate agent that could benefit from this type of video and this type of show and being a part of this community, please consider sharing this out and inviting them to be a part of it. And remember, there is always so much more that I could be talking about, but time is calling. See you guys, hopefully, on Friday. Take care.